When one thinks of subway trains, they usually do not think of luxury. The image that comes to mind is often that of austerity and utilitarianism. With very few exceptions, that is generally the case. Interestingly enough, one of the earliest subway cars built in the US was a private luxury train known as the Mineola, which was built by August Belmont so he can tour the IRT or Interborough Rapid Transit System in New York City as he was its main financier. Every once in a while, however, an unusual program or project emerges that demonstrates new materials and systems that can be associated with the term luxurious. In the early 1970s, the US Department of Transportation launched a program that was intended to give transit operators and riders an experience on existing American mass transit systems that they have most likely not ever seen before. It was called SOAC, the State-of-the-Art Car. Hi, this is Jeffrey, and in this video, we're going to take a look at the SOAC train, otherwise known as the State-of-the-Art Cars. Now, what was SOAC? SOAC was a program administered by the United States Department of Transportation and its subsidiary, the Urban Mass Transit Administration, to design, develop, build, and test the ultimate in rapid transit technology, which would then be shown to various transit agencies throughout the United States as well as to the riding public. Now, in 1974, the SOAC train went into service and it toured 5 cities, and I got to ride the SOAC train when it was in New York City, when it was on the Brighton line, which was the D train back then. There was a hostess on board, and she gave out various booklets on the SOAC, and I had kept them since then. And so here's one of them. This is SOAC is the Now Car. And here's the other book. This is a bigger book. And I scanned these, and so in this video, we'll be taking a look at the booklets that I just showed you, because they have, some really, really great information. Now, also, the United States Department of Transportation issued several volumes on the SOAC train after it was placed into service and the testing period had ended. I believe there were 3 volumes, and I went over those reports, and I really thought that volume 2 was the best because it goes into the history of the SOAC and passenger reaction to the SOAC and other very interesting items as well. So I'm going to be going over excerpts from Volume 2 of the Department of Transportation's final report on the SOAC train. Now, the SOAC was part of a number of very interesting initiatives in the 1970s to design and build really fantastic transit vehicles. Another program that was similar to this was Transbus, and I did a video on that. Now, what's also interesting here is that the SOAC train was really kind of bittersweet, because even though it was a really fantastic transit vehicle that was built, it was also the last subway cars or the last transit vehicles built by the St. Louis Car Company. The St. Louis Car Company lost orders to other manufacturers for like the BART system and the Washington, D.C. Metro, and there was no further work for them. And so unfortunately in 1974, in late 1974, they closed their doors, and they were never to reopen again. So that was quite unfortunate, because the St. Louis Car Company was also known as the Quality Shops. So this video is going to be a documentary style introduction to the SOAC. And so let's get started in learning more about the SOAC train, otherwise known as the State-of-the-Art Cars. This is the official introduction of the SOAC program. In June 1971, the Boeing-Vertol company was awarded a contract number DOT-UT-10007 for systems management of the Urban Rapid Rail Vehicle and Systems Program, otherwise known as URRVS, whose overall objective is to enhance the attractiveness of urban rail transportation. Sponsored by the US Department of Transportation's Urban Mass Transportation Administration, UMTA, the program builds upon and accelerates the technical evolution of rail rapid transit so that new urban rail systems and system extensions can benefit from improved operating economics and enhanced passenger appeal. Urban Rapid Rail Vehicle and Systems Program. Boeing is performing 8 tasks under the Urban Rapid Rail Vehicle and Systems Program. Number 1, provide program management in implementing UMTA efforts toward improving high-speed, frequent stop urban rail systems. Number 2, monitor the testing of the BART prototype cars for input to the program. Complete. Number 3, using BART as a baseline and using current 1971 to 1972 technology in car building, direct the design and construction of 2 new state-of-the-art cars representative of the best available technology. Demonstrate these cars to the transit authorities and the riding public in 5 major cities. Complete. Number 4, conduct an industry-wide design competition and award contracts to produce a 2-car advanced concept train, also known as ACT-1, ACT-1, representative of the next generation of rail transit cars. Demonstrate these cars to the transit authorities and the riding public in 5 major cities. 5, conduct an industry-wide design competition and award contracts for alternative advanced subsystems under the Advanced Subsystem Development Program, also known as ASDP. Number 6, plan for an operational demonstration of an advanced train that incorporates the major advances of SOAC, ACT-1, and ASDP, which is to be called ACT-3. Number 7, perform an economic analysis of the SOAC and ACT cars, leading to estimates of life cycle costs in production quantities. Number 8, perform a human factors evaluation of the SOAC and ACT cars. State-of-the-art car program. The objective of the SOAC task was to demonstrate the current state of the art in rail rapid transit vehicle technology. This objective was fulfilled by the development, test, and demonstration of 2 rail rapid transit cars embodying the best available technology. Passenger convenience and operating efficiency were primary goals for the cars, which were designed to be capable of operation on at least one line of the rapid transit systems in New York, Boston, Cleveland, Chicago, and Philadelphia. The 2 SOAC cars were designed, fabricated, functionally tested, and delivered to the US Transportation Test Center in Pueblo, Colorado, 11.5 months after contract go-ahead by the St. Louis Car Division of General Steel Industries. The cars were shipped to the Rail Transit Test Track at the TTC in August 1972, and on August 12th, SOAC was unveiled and demonstrated to the public, including Secretary of Transportation John Volpe and other officials. During 1973, the SOAC vehicles underwent an extended period of engineering testing. A delay in operational testing and evaluation was caused by a switching accident in August 1973, necessitating major repairs to one of the 2 cars. The results of the SOAC development program through August 1973 and the economic analysis are reported in Volume 1 of this report, entitled State of the Art Car Development Program, Volume 1, Design, Fabrication, and Test. SOAC repairs were completed in December 1973. The cars were returned to the TTC, and systems testing was repeated on the repaired cars between January and April of 1974. The operational test and evaluation phase of the SOAC program started when the cars arrived in New York City on April 18, 1974. This final phase of the SOAC program ended with the completion of the Philadelphia demonstration on April 30th, 1975. So let's take a look at this Milestones chart here, where the accident took place in August of 1973, and then the final Philadelphia demo was completed at the end of April of 1975. Now let's take a more detailed look at the SOAC demonstration program schedule. In New York City, it ran from May 17th to July 19th of 1974 on the A, D, E, and N lines. In Boston, it ran from August 19th to September 19th, 1974 on the Red Line. In Cleveland, it ran in late 1974 for about 15 days total on the Airport Line, which is now the Red Line. In Chicago, it ran in January of 1975 for 13 days in total on the Skokie Swift line, and in Philadelphia, it ran from March 6th to April 30th, 1975 on the Broad Street line. Now, let's take a look at the initial testing statistics. SOAC ran for approximately 19,595 miles over 104 days and carried an estimated 312,000 passengers. It was transferred to the Lindenwold high-speed line on May 1st, 1975, but it was in revenue service for only 23 days between August 12th, 1976 to January 24th, 1977. The SOAC was stored at Boeing-Vertol until 1979. One car was shipped to the Bud Company, and the other car was sent to Pueblo for subsystem testing. Both cars were acquired by the Seashore Trolley Museum in Kennebunkport, Maine in 1989, where they have been ever since. In the book From Horse Cars to Streamliners, An Illustrated History of the St. Louis Car Company by Alan R. Lind, there's a job order list of every car built by the St. Louis Car Company from 1898 until the company closed its doors in the early 1970s. Now, the St. Louis Car Company built the SOAC cars under job number 2D for two state-of-the-art cars, numbers 1 and 2, and it was contracted by the Boeing-Vertol company. There was also a second job order named 2D11-2D14 for tooling costs for job 2D. So these are, I guess, extra tools or extra maintenance costs that are associated with the two state-of-the-art cars that were going to be provided by the St. Louis Car Company. Now, in the Alan R. Lind book on the St. Louis Car Company, the state-of-the-art cars are mentioned on pages 220 and 221. And there are two photographs of the SOAC cars, and I will read the captions here. Two state-of-the-art cars delivered by SLCC in late 1972 were products of a $2 million program financed by the Urban Mass Transit Administration. They are shown here at the Dempster Street outer terminal of the Skokie Swift route during a Chicago test period. These cars, the last type built by SLCC, were two of the finest cars ever outshopped by the firm. And the second photo in the Motormen's cab states, with a control panel that could have come from an industrial control room, the state-of-the-art cars were truly modern in appearance as well as performance. In building them, the SLCC was under the nominal supervision of Boeing-Vertol, UMTA's system manager. SLCC thus ended its life as a subcontractor to an aerospace firm. The SOAC train is actually a modified R44 type subway car, of which 352 were built for the New York City Transit Authority under Order 1C. This actually makes sense because the R44s were produced right before the SOACs, and it was something as an add-on order using the shells or some slightly modified body shells of the R44 subway cars. Probably the most striking feature of the exterior of the SOAC was its large two-piece windshield at the front of each car at the motorman's cab. The motorman had an excellent view of the track ahead. However, there was no provision made for signage at the front of the SOAC train, so that had to be improvised by each individual system. Probably the most innovative feature of SOAC, which was recognized by the riding public, was its very, very unique interior design. Now, each of the two cars had a totally different seating layout. The low-density car, which was car number 1, was more of a commuter or suburban style layout. It had a seating capacity of 62 with a maximum capacity of 200. This car had air-cushioned seats and was divided into 3 zones of red, green, and blue, and it also had 2 tables built in, with seats facing each other. The high-density car, which was car number 2, had a seating capacity of 72 and a maximum capacity of 300. This car was based on the layout of New York City's R44 subway cars, and the seats were yellow and blue, and they were not as comfortable or as luxurious as the seats in car number 1. However, it was still quite attractive. Now, there are numerous pictures of the interior of SOAC car number 1, but there seem to be very, very few photographs or existing photographs of the interior of car number 2. On July 7th, 1974, the New York Times ran an article on the new SOAC train, and here's an excerpt that describes the passenger reaction to the new trains. During demonstrations last week on the A line, countless strap hangers stared in disbelief when the new train breezed into their stations. Many riders seemed afraid to get on, and some of them decided to wait for another train. "I don't believe it," and just plain "wow" were the most frequent reactions among those with enough courage to walk into the car. "This can't be New York City," said one man. Representatives from the Urban Mass Transportation Administration and those from the Boeing-Vertol company, the systems manager, handed out booklets outlining some concepts behind the train, its seating diagrams, and some basic facts. Now let's enjoy some images of the SOAC train in New York City. The previous photos showed the SOAC train on the D line in Brooklyn, and here it is in Manhattan. This photo shows the SOAC at the Smith 9th Street station, and the 2 next photos will show the SOAC on the A train. Now let's see pictures of the SOAC in Chicago on the Skokie Swift line. And finally, the SOAC in Philadelphia. Additionally, Philadelphia took an extra step by giving out a questionnaire to riders and asking them to fill it out after their ride on the SOAC train. What was the reaction to the SOAC at the conclusion of the 5-city demonstration program? Overall, both transit officials and the riding public were very enthusiastic about the new trains. In most cities, the low-density car was the star of the show with its extra comfortable seating and alternating color schemes and tables. However, there were some criticisms. In Cleveland, riders said there were too few windows and not enough handholds. This would make sense, as the Cleveland Airport trains at the time had 10 windows per side, quite different from the R44 body style that the SOAC used. The motormen that operated the train in New York were quite impressed with SOAC. In fact, they requested to operate the train in the 4 other cities it was going to visit. According to the final report, there were special runs for rail fans in every city except New York, and Cleveland had one in November of 1974, about 7 months after the demonstration program ended. Did SOAC have any influence after the demonstration program ended? Possibly to the dismay of many, the SOAC train was never put into mass production. There were obvious obstacles to this. Mainly, it would be impossible to design and build a standardized, high-platform, heavy-rail, rapid transit car for the older legacy rapid transit systems in the United States. Each system has its own specifications and requirements, not to mention there are so many physical differences between each system that a standardized rail rapid transit car is pretty much impossible to design and build. When one looks at the interiors of the original Washington, D.C. metro trains, it's possible that some design cues were taken from SOAC. Looking back, SOAC represented a unique period in U.S. transit history. Built at a time when many systems were facing deterioration and large budget deficits, SOAC offered a glimmer of hope of a brighter future for mass transit in America. More than 50 years on, this type of program appears to have been never repeated. Today, SOAC resides at the Seashore Trolley Museum in Kennebunkport, Maine, in an unrefurbished state. From the photos, it's apparent that car number 1 is open to the public, but car number 2, the high-density car, is closed. Will SOAC ever be refurbished or renovated back to its former glory? Well, the likelihood is probably not, but we can hope that maybe one day, it will. SOAC would have been the future basis of the Advanced Concept Train, also known as ACT or ACT. A prototype of ACT was built and tested in Pueblo, Colorado, but never ran on any existing transit system, unlike SOAC. The ACT prototype eventually ended up at the Tennessee Valley Railway Museum. The Rock Hill Trolley Museum wanted to buy it, but it was scrapped before it could be bought and transported. Perhaps SOAC and ACT programs were too ambitious for its time or was just not practical. Whatever the case, thus ended the US Department of Transportation's attempt to design and build a standard subway rapid transit car for American transit systems. So there you have it, the story of SOAC, the state-of-the-art car train. Now, this is a little project that I've been wanting to do for a while already because there's just no documentaries out there on SOAC. There's not even a promotional film from the US Department of Transportation about SOAC. So I decided to do as much research as I can and gather as much information as I can and put together this video about the SOAC train. Now, when I wrote SOAC, I was a child, and those memories are still very clear with me because it was something really, really exciting because I was a train enthusiast back then. And so it was something just so different than what had existed in New York City at the time. And nothing has really surpassed it. Now, the first time I saw SOAC, I was sitting at the trestle at Albemarle Road. I remember me and my mother during the summer, we used to go there, and there was like a bridge and overpass and steps on either side of the tracks. And we were sitting on the steps, and I was watching the trains, and then all of a sudden, I see this, incredible looking two-car train that sort of looks like a New York City subway train, but not really. Especially the front end. I was like, what is that? What? I've never seen that kind of a train before. What is that? And it was only two cars. So when we got home, my mother called up the transit authority. There was that number 330-1234. I don't know if it exists anymore, but I remember she called that number, and they gave her all of the information about SOAC. They gave her the schedule, and they told her to wait in the middle of the platform because that's where it will stop. And so the next day, I think it was, we went out looking for the SOAC, and we got it. We went to the Church Avenue station on the D train a few minutes before, or a little while before it was supposed to arrive, and it was really terrific. And I remember the people were just really, they didn't know what to think because it was something that was just so different than what you were normally used to in New York City. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this look at the SOAC train, the state-of-the-art car from the 1970s. And as always, thank you very, very much for watching, and have a great day. Bye.